I'm looking out the window and I noticed the few stars that I could see went black. It was black, completely black, the shape of a triangle. And it just came right, almost like it came right from the blackness of the universe. And it just came hovering right down. And it came straight down until it was only about 2 feet from, I could almost touch it. And it was right above the car. I remember it. It was a gunmetal black. There were no lights. There was like a texture on the ship. It wasn't smooth, and it was quiet. It had no sound, and it was about the size of like a football field. It just completely took over the whole bridge and our car.
Perfect. I want to introduce Ginger Ann London of the Alien Abductions and UFO podcast. I noticed when you started that we share a Facebook connection, so I want to be clear there. And we appreciate your art and your life. But when I heard that you were beginning this from an experience of an abductee, I wanted to reach out and hear what it has been your experience, and what caused you to feel like now was the time to go forward and share your experience.
Yes, well, that's the thing is I felt like since our government was talking about it, it just feels it's like they're taking it more seriously. Before it was people would just laugh at you. People would think you're nuts, and people still do. But the thing is that it just feels like it feels a little safer too. Anyone that's had an experience that might have even met the Men in Black, for instance, that kind of is the scariest part for me, I think, is talking was scary to me. I've had these experiences since I was little, and before then, my mother as well went through this. And so it just kind of, and they were always around, the Men in Black too, to kind of almost intimidate. And then they kind of disappeared. I haven't seen them in over a decade. Um, Actually, about 9 years, I haven't seen them. So I don't know where they went. I don't know if this just maybe they just don't bother to intimidate, but I also haven't had an experience in 9 years. So maybe they only show up when you have an experience, is what I noticed too. But seeing the government talking about it, seeing a lot of, these military people coming forward, CIA members, Pentagon members, it just feels like a little less scary. Like if they're still alive, then maybe I can I can do this without fearing for my life so much. And maybe the Men in Black won't be so intimidating in the year
It's
2025.
probably the closest we've come in our lifetime, at least, to having the government acknowledge that at least there's been these aerial phenomena that they
Yes.
can explain and that defy what is known as a current set of physics and
Oh,
science
yes.
knowledge.
Yes.
But let's start from the earliest point. What do you remember your first experience as an abductee?
Yes, I do. That happened. It was about 1989. I was very little. I had just moved from Maine to Boston, and my mom and dad had divorced. So we had to move in with my grandmother and her sisters. And I was hoping I could go for ice cream late at night, my after dinner, and my my aunt was like, "Okay, I'll take you for ice cream." So she got in the car, we got in the car, we were on the way. Now it was already sunset, it gets dark, early in Boston, and we were heading towards the ice cream shop, and right over the bridge there was this nice little bridge that kind of crosses over to where the ice cream shop was on the other side. And before we could even get there, all of a sudden, I was like obsessed with the stars. I missed them. I used to look at them when I was little. And when I was in Boston, you couldn't see them as well. So I was a little disappointed in that. So I used to look out the window and I was like kind of my head peeking out the window. I shouldn't have been doing that. But this was the late 80s. And my aunt was just like, oh, whatever, you know. So I'm looking out the window and I noticed the few stars that I could see went black. And it like this object looked like it kind of blocked the stars. And I thought, that's weird. It was black, completely black, the shape of a triangle. And it just came right, almost like it came right from the blackness of the universe. And it just came hovering right down. And it came straight down until it was only about 2 feet from, I could almost touch it. And it was right above the car. I quickly went back into the car and I told my aunt, I'm like, I'm telling her this, look at it, what is this, and keep in mind, I'm very little. And so I ended up getting her to, she was starting to freak out. She saw it. She knew there was something above the car. She was also a very religious woman. I will let you know that. And that she was just like, no, like she's pulling me back in. She's yelling at me now, get in the car, get in the car. And I'm like, no, but look at it. It's like, look at it. I'm like, so I wasn't scared. I was just kind of like, what am I looking at? This is fast. Do you know what this is? So I didn't understand. She didn't know what this was. And to me, this just felt like something new to explore. And I wanted to touch it. It was so close. And I remember it. It was a gunmetal black. There were no lights. There was like a texture on the ship. It wasn't smooth, and it was quiet. It had no sound, and it was about the size of like a football field. It just completely took over the whole bridge and our car. Um, and I noticed something very strange when I went back into the car. My aunt's still trying to pull me back in. I noticed she now started to kind of like freeze up almost. There was something that happened to her, and she stopped pulling me in eventually. And I noticed that, and I got back in the car, and I was like, and I know she wasn't moving. She was completely frozen stiff, and it was almost like someone paused a movie or a video game, just hit pause. And I was the only one that could move, and I noticed there was no cars on the road. There was nothing. It was almost like all of time stopped. And I don't know if it was just in our area. I have no idea. It just felt like everything was silent and I couldn't get her to interact with me. I kept waving my hand in front of her, trying to shake her, and she was just with her hands on the wheel, completely. And the car had stopped moving too, just so you know. Everything stopped. And we had just there was no interacting with her. Her eyes were wide open in fear. Like it looked like she was whatever she was in fear of, and frozen in that sense. She was just kind of not moving. It wasn't out of fear, I think. It was just, I think she just couldn't move. It was like some kind of force was stopping her from being able to blink or anything. And I don't remember anything at that point until the next thing I remember. I was in a hallway with a bunch of other little kids. And it was this like metallic walls, and there was nothing around at that moment until these giant doors opened, and we were all suddenly kind of told to walk in this direction. We just were shuffled by a bunch of these tall robed beings, and they told us to go into that room. So myself being the most curious kid, I thought this was the most exciting time. I didn't know what was happening. I thought this was normal. I think it's just I was so young. I was probably like, I mean, I was born in 83 and this was 89. I just I was just like a
six
baby
years old.
and
Yeah.
6 years old and just, I was in awe of everything. And I thought this was something normal that would happen, like they felt like grown adults that you could communicate with in some sense, but I noticed they weren't moving their mouths. So it just felt like teachers, like you were in a class with a bunch of teachers. And they
That
shuffled.
that suggests at least kind of the feeling of authority being projected from these creatures. And
Yes,
did
yes.
you say that every one of the human attendees were children?
Yes, they were all about the same age as me, and they were just and they were all confused, but just kind of looking around, and the beings were kind of keeping us calm somehow. I really don't know how there were no children crying. I don't know if we were like special little children, like just don't cry. But I am autistic, so I didn't cry a lot or anything like that. I'm just a very observant. I'm also artistic, so I am very observant, and I kind of just didn't react. I wasn't scared. And I don't think the other kids were either. They were just confused. And I was too. So
How many of them were there, the children?
hundreds, hundreds of
Oh,
us. It almost looked like every child in the entire area of Boston was abducted and taken to this one place. And we didn't know if we were on a ship yet or a room of some kind. It looked like the ceilings were really, really high. And it was just these doors went all the way to the top and to the bottom of the floor. They must have been 40 feet high at least. It was a really almost like you felt like you were in some kind of a chapel or something. And the walls were metallic. The floor was a little shiny. There was some kind of a light. It was a light glow of a blue tint almost kind of coming out of the wall or from above us or something. It was a very low, dimly lit area, but comforting, I guess. And it felt like a movie theater almost. And we get into the big room, and now this is where more light started to come in, but it was this giant space. I don't think we were on that craft that was hovering above the car because now it's a circular space, and this thing was a triangle. So the circular space was massive. It was like a giant mall or something. It looked like about the size of a massive mall. It had multiple layers to it. And I only know this because the child in me, the curious child, I run. Now there's a tall being waiting for me. He's gesturing for me to come to him. And he must have been about 7 feet tall or something. And he's wearing a robe and he has a giant hood covering his eyes and his whole face, really, and he's gesturing for me to come to them. The energy felt very uh loving, almost like a kind of like Jesus energy, I would have to say. And now I was just learning about Catholicism. My grandmother had enrolled me into Catholic school, so it just felt like I was in that kind of atmosphere, I guess, where you could feel like you could trust, the religious sort of characters. And this is what they kind of presented themselves as. It almost felt like they were dressed in these robes, these fancy robes that kind of made them look religious in some sense, so I trusted them.
right,
And I ran right past him. And I just went towards this area where it was all open. And I saw there was a sort of railing. And I'm trying to look over this railing. And over it, I could tell there were other layers. And it was other floors that were very similar to the one we were on. And they all had more children, little children walking around with all these tall guides, taking their hands and guiding them around this space. And there's a reason that they took us here. Basically, along the walls, what looked like walls to me, I don't know. As a child, this technology was not available. It looked like there were tall screens, like television screens, but they were thin. It looked like they were made of glass. I really, they were see-through. And I think they were windows, but they were playing movies on them, like t a little play. They were playing some kind of just video footage and the video footage told a human story. It wasn't alien or anything like that. It was about us, and everything they showed me was about us. And the children now each got a guide, and every guide for every child there was a guide, and they took our hand. So I remember his hand coming out of the sleeve, and it was a very wide sleeve, and it had little details along the edge. And his hand was really long, and my hand was like little, going in his, but he took it gently. And I tried to look up at him, like I wanted to see their face, what he looked like. And he was really trying to hide that. He didn't want us to see. I think they were trying to hide the eyes. And I remember when I could see up into his, the shadowy part of his face, it was dark and his eyes were bluish, but they were very, very big. And I mean, his head wasn't the normal size of a human. These beings are really tall, so their heads are even bigger than ours. And then add that with the giant eyes, and it just looks incredible. And but I was fascinated. I thought he was very interesting looking. I wasn't one to judge as a little 6-year-old child. I just, you don't judge, you know? And so I just thought, are you Jesus? And he didn't want to answer about that. He didn't want to talk about. He said no, but I noticed his mouth wasn't moving, and I thought that was odd. How are we communicating? And I also noticed my mouth had never had a chance to move, but I didn't speak until I was about 6 anyway. So my grandmother had to teach me how to communicate like a normal person because I was autistic and it took me a while to learn. So I just didn't speak that way anyway. I was just thinking things, and then he would answer that question. It was very strange, almost like it was downloaded into you immediately. And that's how, and I could hear his voice, but not. I don't know. If you have an internal voice and when you're reading a book, that's kind of how it came off, like the internal voice you have. He eventually takes my hand, pulls me away from the railing, all of that, and tells me to follow him. And now we're walking up to these screens, and he's like, I want to show you something. And the screens were playing all along the edge of, all along the wall, actually, in the whole circle. And in the center was this light that was artificial, and it was very soft light, and it was coming down. And it was the only light really that was coming in other than the screens. Past the video footage were stars, and I just thought that was interesting. Like, I didn't know if we were in space or if this was video footage of the stars, and then laid on top of that was videos. And the screens were not widescreen, they were vertical, and they went up and down like that. So all along the wall next to each other. And they told a story, and it started from the beginning. And it was these ancient civilization sort of structures. It looked like to me like Egypt, and that's all I knew really was Egypt when I was little, maybe Greece or something. But they were back like when they looked they just didn't look like they were in ruin. And I thought, is that Egypt? And I knew what Egypt was from little cartoons and stuff like that. So, I was a slightly educated, but I didn't know any of the other stuff he was showing me, these beautiful cities that were made of stone, and they were just gorgeous. I didn't know if that was made here on Earth or what, but he did say to me, we are proud of what you have done, of what humans have done here. We love this. He was telling me over and over how proud they were of these things we created, things we built. That to them was, they were just so happy about, almost like parents being very proud of you for getting good grades on your report card or something. It was just, I could feel the sort of maybe parental love coming out of that, support even. And so it felt like wow, like we did these things. I didn't know that, and he's teaching me about that. And then he takes me through sort of the decades of our life, Um, I there were other civilizations, by the way. I didn't even know what they were. They just looked beautiful. They were like magical cities to me. I had no idea, but they were beautiful cities. And it looked like video footage they took, and it was from above, and it was just all this, you could see all the cities and everything. So I just want to fill that in on the details. I thought that was amazing, and I didn't know how they had that footage. I I had never seen something, and the colors were very vivid. This technology was different from what we had in the 80s, and you know, just very low. It's not like the 4K, 8K television screens we have today, which probably comes closer to what they were showing me. So it looked very vivid, almost like you could go into that time.
And this
And
would have been the time of the VHS, basically, right?
yes, so I was
Yeah.
expecting like, fuzziness, or even like the quality you would see at a movie theater. But they had more advanced technology, something close to what we have, definitely. So today. And but as he took me through each sort of change in human evolution almost. It was like he showed me more cathedrals, other cities that looked more modern as we got into the more modern decade of our time. And then came these sort of bombs and things like that. He started to show me things that he goes, and now I'm going to show you something that we're not very happy about, that we're not very proud about, and that we're hoping you will also like understand the importance of this. And he just went on. I can't remember every word, but it was like basically that whole when we are very, very, and I remember him saying disappointed in this. And when he took me to the end of it, the end of the story of what he was trying to tell us here with the pictures and the videos was he showed me mushroom clouds. Now, as a child, it was still in 89, it was still it was the end, coming to the end of the Cold War, but we still had to hide under our desks. And I didn't know why. I didn't even know what a
So
nuclear
American to do
weapon was.
that. My wife's
Yes,
Canadian, so I mentioned the whole duck and cover film and having a duck beneath our desks and stuff, and
yes,
it wasn't something that was maybe common here. You guys are about the same age. I'm in
yes.
Canada now, but absolutely, I get the time period. Now, when they voiced the disappointment from the war in general, how did that like, what did you feel as a 6 year old?
I had no idea what I was looking at. I honestly didn't know what he meant. So he showed me more stuff to show me why this bomb, this particular thing that we created, he taught me that this bomb is just so bad that it will destroy the planet. If this was something that would happen in our future, or if this had already happened. I had no idea. And that was something I just really, as a child, I didn't know if it already happened or not. I know, I know we were hiding from something like that, but I thought we could survive it if we hid under the desk. We couldn't, and that we would all be completely wiped out and there would be no hiding. There's no hiding from this bomb, and it would do exactly what it showed. And he wanted me to see on ground. He had ground footage of what happens to the plants, the nature, and watching little animals die this way was extremely traumatic as a child. And I remember some kids starting to cry by this point. And I was crying, but not loudly. I remember like being very emotional about it, and I didn't want this to happen. So they were extremely disappointed in this weapon, this particular weapon. Nothing else seemed to really bother them as much as this. And the planet was something that was so important. And it's not just about us, it is about the animals and the nature of everything. I feel like, in my own opinion, after thinking about this for so long, that if they are like creators of us, or if they did, create this planet or work on everything here, I think if I was them and I was a scientist or whatever they are, I would be very disappointed too. Like, I would be scared we would wipe out millions of years of work, you know? And it's like, I feel like maybe that might be their their concern. I don't know if they're so concerned about us as much. They could be. They seem very loving in that sense. At least that's the energy. It feels very parental. But I think they were trying to almost get us to wake up to how dangerous this is, and our generation, particular. It seemed like, I don't know how long they've been doing this. I didn't know if this was something that it was just for, the millennial generation. This was the beginning of the millennials. And so I don't know if that was something they were trying to maybe think that if they could get it into our heads, we would end this. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know how they thought I could put a stop to this. There's
And it may not be relying on you and you alone. It sounds as
right.
if then there were a good 100 recruits.
Yes, yes,
And that's something to consider. I was speaking with a friend who was more skeptical quite recently, and we were talking about the alien life forms demonstrating what is like their commodity. I find it peculiar that here on Earth we tend to weaponize almost all science. We create the bombs you discuss, or AI enemy tracking devices and things of that
yes,
nature. Where if another civilization has intelligence or education or love as their priority or their commodity, it could be that they're completely nonviolent and
yes,
want that from us as well. Do
right.
you feel that being autistic and having that deficit in communication early on, do you think that had anything to do with your abduction?
I have no idea. I just know that really, I don't know. I just think that I that's just how I was when I reacted, how I reacted at that time. I became as the experiences continued as I got older, I wasn't so like, ooh, look at all this cool stuff. I started getting really scared. I didn't know what was happening later, and I started to feel like the experience I had when I was young. My aunt kept trying to. Well, I didn't even finish what happened when I get back, but um, how my aunt reacted, and she didn't want to talk about it after, and she kept telling me to forget about it. Oh, it was don't, I don't want to talk about it. That never happened, or I don't want to even believe that this is crazy, and so she's very Catholic and she's Italian, and there's just no, you cannot, so I was still kind of like, was it a dream, and my mother was like, no. When I told her, she has been through similar situations. Not so much of a message sort of thing like that, but scarier things, to be honest. So I think she felt maybe a little bit less scared when I told her my experience. And she was like, I believe it, as I'm a little 6-year old telling mom, and then like these things happen, and she was just like, I believe it. Yeah.
And then at what point, how often did these abductions occur for you?
Well, the thing is throughout most of the 90s, as I was becoming a teenager and all that and getting older, I didn't have any, like, I don't remember any physical abductions, but there was activity that happened in the house that we were living in at the time. There was Men in Black suddenly showing up, and they moved in right next door to us, and they became our neighbors. They had a trailer, a rundown looking trailer with satellites on it and everything. And they even knocked on our door and told us, "Oh yeah, we're going to be moving in right on that patch of land that isn't taken. So just to let you know, we're going to be right over there." And my mother's like, okay. It was just a totally different experience, and it was getting scary now. I didn't like the sort of paranormal activity that followed this as well. And at first we thought it's ghosts, this place is haunted, but that wasn't the case. It was actually more them being in the presence. And when they were there, things happened. Like poltergeist stuff started to happen. And that I didn't really make that connection to until later. I was like, something every time they are around, this sort of ghostly activity happens, and I was starting to be like, is this place haunted? We even had holy water, from the priest to help come and
Right.
bless the house. Didn't do anything. It was just my mom installed a security system because doors were opening, and then you would hear like little feet running through the house, which was very weird, almost sounded like a Chucky doll or something, like a little person was running through the house. And that made no sense to me and my brother. We thought, was it the kids down the street pulling pranks? So I was ready to chase them down. I at the time I didn't want to believe ghosts existed. That terrified me, like even more than aliens half the time or anything like that. And that's something else too, is the aliens. I don't even know if these beings are alien like we think, oh, they come from some other planet. I actually am very convinced they do not. Or at least if they did, it was millions of years ago. I actually think they've been here forever. Showing the footage they had, they have been here like since before us, perhaps. And it seemed that they have been following us through our time. So it doesn't feel like they just suddenly appeared, when we started designing nuclear weapons or, starting to come into advancements. And so I hate calling them aliens myself. I actually started realizing that I don't think they are. And I didn't
Do
know.
you think they then coincide with us in existence, and they
Yes,
have, and they reside here on Earth?
absolutely. I think they possibly live either somewhere hidden in our planet, or they are outside of our planet, hiding out somewhere, and they're nearby and they can just be here, or they're from, I don't know, somewhere else. I really can't explain, but I do remember seeing the stars when I was whatever I was on behind the video footage. So that possibly was some kind of transparent screen, and it was like glass and it could play videos. So I just think that was really cool technology, and I couldn't understand it when I was a kid. But now I think back and I'm like, I think that was transparent glass with video
Now we
technology.
can arrive at that, right? We've
Yes,
arrived there
yes.
in technology ourselves. So,
Right,
so
right.
if this continued, if the abductions continued, how often would you think it happened, or how many times do you feel like you can remember being abducted?
So I had so there's so much to tell, which I'm gonna get into on my channel later because there's just
I
so
think
much.
that's why we want
It
to
would be
share
here all night.
your YouTube definitely. So it's the Alien Abductions and UFO podcast. It
Yes.
is always chilling to me because as I sit with individuals who have had these experiences, there's this kind of similar thread that
Hmm.
runs through all these stories that doesn't often pair up with, say, the pop culture alien abduction. I'm
Yes.
sure somewhere, if we look for a film or a book or something that had similarities, maybe there would be. But there's
Right.
always this little element where it's like it just makes me pause and think, well, what the hell's going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Getting back, how quickly did your mom share that she too had experienced abductions?
Well, for her, she had more earthly experiences with them, and they would come to Earth and I don't know, mess with her. And that's, I actually hated living with my mother because this stuff happened and it was terrifying to me. It wasn't as friendly as the abduction I had at 6 years old. But before, when I was really little, my mother had an experience that she told us every night. And before then, before she met my dad, she was young. She would date men at school or whatever, when she was in high school. And she said men in black would go and threaten her boyfriends and tell them to stay away from her. And so all her boyfriends would come up to her and say, Janine, I can't hang out with you. I can't go out with you. These guys in black suits or whatever just threatened my life and told me to get away from you. So this has been going on for her for a long time. Randomly, they would take pictures of her. Random men in black would just take pictures of her throughout her life. She didn't understand that. And none of us really understood that. And we were like, what are you, like some kind of. Now, my mom was adopted by my grandmother. My grandmother adopted 4 kids, and my mom was adopted. So we didn't know who her real family was or anything like that.
Right.
We didn't know what where she came from. So it was very confusing at first. And she ended up basically going throughout her childhood and into her adulthood until and with all of this until she met my dad. They got married, had got pregnant. She got pregnant with me and my brother, gave birth to us, and then they moved to Maine very early in our like when we were still babies. They bought this farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere. Perfect place for these beings to show up and kind of torment my mother, and without anyone knowing. So we're in the mountains in the middle of nowhere in Maine and very close to Canada. And all of a sudden, my mom one night, my dad was working and she's just watching over us. She said she was like working out or whatever. It was the 80s, working out in the kitchen or whatever she was doing. And all of a sudden these like she starts the lights go out and all of a sudden all these my mom tells the story better. All these little feet and everything start thumping around outside of her on her porch, and she sees these little white figures outside of the windows in the farmhouse, and all around her there was these little circular round black, not little, big round black eyes looking at her through the windows. And so my mom's freaking out, the doors are slamming upstairs. It's almost like poltergeist activities happening at the same time. She can hear the feet tapping and running around, the dogs barking outside, and it's just madness and chaos. My mom's freaking out. So she runs, grabs her gun, and she runs into the crib where the cribs are, where me and my brother was sleeping. We were just babies. We had been asleep the whole time, I guess. My mom is guarding us, and she yells out to whoever this is causing all this chaos to get out. And she says, I have a gun and I'm not afraid to use it. She didn't know what was going on, and then she's starting to really look at the windows, and she can see these little non-human looking beings are looking through the windows with these giant black eyes, and it's like they wanted to get in, and but they didn't. she said, I think they were trying to get you kids, and I was like, because we were just born, my brother was just born, and my brother's only 2 years younger than me. So I was literally, we were still in our little cribs and everything, and she believed that they were there for us, and they wanted to take us from her. And so I believe that too. Actually, for the longest time, I didn't want to believe that. That terrified me. I thought they were going to come and get us, and so my dad eventually comes up the driveway. He's coming back from work, and all the lights pop back on. The beings are gone, and my mom is still shaking. She's in fear. My dad even confirmed this story. I had to go and, later on in life, I interviewed him about this, and I was like, Dad, did this happen? Did you see Mom like this? And he said, Oh, yeah, I had to pry the gun from her hand. It was like it was stuck in her hand, and it had a pattern from squeezing it so tight. The details that were on the gun handle were on her palm. And he said, she was shaking, terrified, and she told him what happened, and he didn't. Dad was just like, "What the hell?" You know, like, but that was a scary story for me as a kid, and I didn't want to believe that something like that could happen. And for the longest time, I kind of just dealt with that. Now, my abduction was different because it wasn't the same type of experience my mom had. It was these tall beings, not little beings, and it was very different. So I was kind of like thinking this was something from the new Catholic Church that I just, I didn't know
Could be
what
as we get
that
older
experience.
sometimes too. It's like the more we have as information in our head, that schema, um,
Yes.
we can start
Hmm.
to turn these events into something negative,
Right, right.
where there's something innocent about a child. And now your overall impressions over time are that these beings are peaceful.
Hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Over time, it took me, but I still, uh, it's like I know they're peaceful, at least to me. One night, I, I had a really like I started realizing this is something's really going on here, and I didn't want this to be real at all. And I started getting really traumatized by these experiences, the poltergeist activity, the little people running through our house, like my mom having weird experiences, the Men in Black literally watching us. And I'm going to talk a lot about Men in Black on my channel. So they have
Okay.
secrets. They have
Um,
secrets.
some things I wanted to mention to our
Yeah.
audience is you've done some artist renderings of
Yes.
these individuals, these aliens or travelers, we'll call them.
Yes.
But I think if you're willing to share, I'll be able to put those up when I edit this video.
Absolutely.
And
Yes, you
then,
can you can do that.
two, you mentioned, we'll have to close with this, but you mentioned with a story of someone photographing a craft very
Yes.
near where you lived, right?
Yes, that was my second abduction that I had when I was 9 years ago when I was older. And that was like at least the one I can remember clearly. Others, I believe I was abducted, but I have no memory, thankfully. And but I did have at-home experiences, and I'll go into those on my channel. I can
Okay,
dive
perfect.
because it continued on this nightmare. So, and then that last abduction was the one that made me realize they do not mean harm. In fact, they helped me. And I thought that was interesting. And these were the smaller ones. And I got to see someone very special in that time. So I will get so much further into that. And yeah, you can definitely share the artwork that I did of those I think are there's three beings. I still have to do the one other being that I haven't really painted him yet. Not him, but them. They all look the same, these ones, but those ones have the almond-shaped black eyes, and they're small. But the other three, you can show the artwork too.
Okay,
And
absolutely.
yeah,
I'll
I've
share
seen
that.
four beings.
So,
Yes,
so I'll
and
provide a link to alien abductions and UFO
mhm.
podcast. So none of these abductions are happening at this point, or none that you are aware of.
Thankfully, none have happened in 9 years, and I have been
Okay.
very thankful for that.
All right. Thank you for sharing, first of all, your story. I think it's very bold. In the
Thank you.
past, we've done three other interviews with alien abductees, and they each wanted themselves disguised in some way, shape, or form. Um, you've never impressed me as somebody who's attention seeking.
No,
So, yeah, it's just not been the case with you.
no,
But we look forward to hearing more of what you want to share and
absolutely.
hopefully arriving at some bigger prevailing message because I think that may have
Yes,
been the point of the screens and the history
I
and
think
what it
so.
was that they wanted to share.
Yeah, I think that's the most important message, and I want to make that quite clear. I think that the nuclear weapons are much worse than we think. I don't even think our government and everyone who has one wants even us to know just how dangerous these really that I mean basically I think one of them would be enough to wipe us all out, just one. And I think that would be the end of everything. And I think I I am afraid they might actually take these from us. I actually think that this is going to end with not us agreeing to get rid of them. I think they're going to take them from us, and that will be the end of it. We have
And
to
then it sounds like you've become kind of their ambassador in a way, and
somewhat.
perhaps
I don't even think I'm
this.
alone. I don't think I'm alone. There were other kids with me, hundreds, and not if probably even thousands. I don't, there could have been many nights that they've done this all across the planet. And this was something I heard other people say they saw the black triangle craft. It has no lights, mind you. So people saw lights. I don't think that's the craft. And this one was silent, no lights, black gunmetal with design on it. So if anyone has seen that, then, and if you were taken, you were probably little, or if you've seen this and had the same experience, let me know and come to my show because I want to know what they saw too. I want to remember. I want to see if they remember the same thing and the same message because I remember we were all being told the same message. So it's not just me. I'm definitely not special in this. This is a serious message, and I think that's why I'm not afraid to come forward and talk about it. I think we're coming down to something very serious, and I think our government knows it, and I think that might be why they might be talking about it. So, talking about these beings. So, I think that's why. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you again for sharing. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. And
Thank
I'll
you.
share this and good luck with everything. And
Thank
hopefully
you.
we can talk in the future.
Absolutely. I'll be glad to be back. So,
All right.
thank you again, Kevin.
All right. Good night. Take care.
Good night.